All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome you to the call. My name is Chris Tinney. I'm a national ambassador for Circles USA. And I want to welcome to our call, How to End Poverty in Your Community, an introduction to Circles. You're about to hear from two people making a real difference in their community. First, you'll hear from Adam Hartnett, a regional trainer for the Poverty Solutions Group. The Poverty Solution Group runs one of the most effective Circle campaigns in the country. You'll also hear from Chantel Akar, who went from being a Circle leader to sitting on the Poverty Solutions Group Board of Directors. Today, our goal is to give you insight into how the Circles model is changing communities by supporting individuals and families in a unique and comprehensive way as they lift themselves out of poverty. Nelson Mandela said, like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It's man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. If you're on this call, you most likely agree with that statement. You know that we can eliminate anything that we as a society have created. However, many times, eradicating poverty is not the conversation that's happening in many communities. Or if it is happening, it's not accompanied by a proven plan and a mental model to do so. I hope today's webinar inspires you to look at reducing poverty, engaging your community, and deploying more effective strategies. Feel free to ask questions in the chat box during the webinar. And if you're listening to the recorded version of this webinar and have questions, visit circlesusa.org or send an email to hello@circlesusa.org. And with that, I'll hand it over to Adam Hartman, Regional Trainer for the Poverty Solutions Group.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Chris. My name is Adam Hartnett. As Chris said, I'm based out of Orlando, Florida, with an organization called Poverty Solutions Group. We're the lead organization for Circles in Central Florida. And I'm here today, not only with Chantel, but also with Lynette Fields, the Executive Director of Poverty Solutions Group as well. So I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Hello, I'm Lynette Fields, as Adam said, Executive Director for Poverty Solutions Group. And we're just delighted to host you all today. And we really think a lot about how Circles has positively impacted our community, and look forward to sharing the stories with you and helping you on the journey if you choose to move forward. Thank you, Adam and Chantel.
Thanks, Lynette. And I'm Chantel. I'm a proud former Circle Leader graduate. I now serve on the board as an ally and board of directors, and I'm also an ally and a training facilitator. This work is amazing. I absolutely love it, and I'm so happy to have you all here today. We want to know a little bit about you as well. If you could please put your name in the chat and any other details that you'd like to share about yourself. And if you have questions, feel free to put those in as well. We will have a Q&A session at the end, but we'll be watching the chat box as we go. All right, so today our agenda looks a little bit as followed. We're going to be talking about reducing poverty in your community, and we'll describe how the Circles models uses social capital. We'll also talk about the ways that we have used Circles to transform lives in our community. We'll talk about individual transformation as well as community transformation, and we'll dive deeper into how pursuing systemic change, how we pursue systemic change, as well as the different social enterprise initiatives that we'll have. And like I said earlier, we'll also do some Q&A. So like I said, any questions, just type them on in. We'll be looking for those, and we are ready to get started.
Yeah, so Circles exists to alleviate poverty. It's through Circles we're able to help families get out of poverty and also remove barriers that keep people in poverty. So we're combining that direct service with a systemic change approach. So historically, federal, state, and local government, as well as private nonprofits, probably many of us in this room work in these areas, we do a good job at producing family stability programs that help to fill in a gap. Maybe that gap is something like housing or transportation, but rarely have we been able to address the root causes of poverty. We tend to give that service but to overcome poverty permanently has eluded us. Why? Much of what we have been able to do in the past has been transactional. We offer a service like paying a bill or paying rent or providing groceries. And as a social worker, a trained social worker, I'm very well acquainted with those systems and approaches. But Circles offers something different. Circles works to change the situation by offering a relationship rather than a transactional approach. In Circles, it's about social capital, access to people, places that can get you what you need to survive or to thrive rather than just survive.
So as we can understand, people are relational beings. So naturally, first and most important resource for someone such as myself who's working their way out of poverty will be to build relationships with people that you can trust. The heart of our work here at Circles is building relationships across those lines of differences. We gather middle income and high income volunteers to come alongside those experiencing poverty. None of this can happen without focus on creating a safe and a trusting relationship between the folks of low-income communities and the folks of middle and upper incomes. These relationships become the foundation of the work that we do. And we believe building intentional and authentic relationships across those economic communities inspires and unleashes human gifts and assets that can totally transform neighborhoods and communities.
So in Circles, the Circles model has basically two main players. One is the Circle leaders, and those are those individuals or families seeking to overcome poverty. Circle sets the goal that they're going to reach 200% or higher of the federal poverty levels. So that's the role Chantel started out in, the Circle leader. So Circle leaders take on responsibility for creating plans to overcome poverty for themselves and their families. And we're intentional about naming the individuals or families who are working their way out of poverty as a Circle leader because we know they are the experts on their lives, on their strengths, on their struggles. So Circle leaders must take that leadership role in building resources to create a better life for themselves and their families. The other player that we talk about is called the Circle ally. So Circle ally is a volunteer who agrees to spend time with, get to know, and then offers support to the Circle leader. And that order is really important. When an ally seeks to learn and understand first, then they're better able to offer support in a relevant and sustainable way. Circles USA provides chapters with a 12-week curriculum and workbook to support Circle leaders as they move toward achieving those goals toward economic stability. We also provide an extensive training program for volunteers to challenge negative stereotypes, to understand poverty, and to help foster healthy relationships.
If you guys see the picture on the bottom, Circles Allies, that's actually myself with my mother, my daughter, and my allies. And that was when I received my US citizenship. So they are with me at all times, good times, bad times, but that was a really great day for me. So here's a map of the Circles model and what it looks like in a typical Circles chapter. So Circle leaders and their children, and I have three, they were with me along the whole journey. We're joined by our Circles allies each week, and we work on individual plans and goals towards economic stability. We have a coach and a coordinator for our chapter, and they're typically staff roles. And they're there to support the match circle and to ensure that the whole community runs well. Each of the resource teams is made up mostly of volunteers and advances a key task. For example, As you can see on there, the first one to the left is the community team. They will do things such as organize shared meals and childcare for our weekly meetings. We also have a recruitment team, which participants and volunteers kind of go out into the community, let everyone know what we're doing and how we can assist. We also have a service team that identifies community services that would help families, such as housing, food assistance, and different things that would benefit our circle leaders. We bring it to them. The jobs and education team builds relationships with local employers and training programs so that we can develop pathways for future circle leaders. And we also have a Big View team, which convenes policymakers and community members to find solutions for the systemic barriers which are limiting the success of circle leaders trying to exit poverty.
This whole circles model works together to advance social capital, which is that value of connection, those networks of people or relationships that help get you what you need. So life, when you're cut off from essential resources, it presents any person, no matter who you are, with a lot to deal with, especially when you're trying to do it all on your own. But when you have access to those supportive relationships that Circles offers, you're able to come up with a plan to lighten your load and move ahead. That is the power of social capital. There are 3 kinds of social capital that Circles helps to build: bonding, bridging, and linking. So bonding social capital is what happens when like-minded people or people with similar experiences are able to get together and develop that sense of trust with each other. And that often happens among circle leaders within circles. The second is bridging social capital. And that occurs when you feel a connection with somebody who's different from you. Hence the relationship between the circle leader and that leader's allies, right? And then those resource teams provide what we call linking social capital. And that's with individuals and institutions in positions of power who offer a service or offer something that's useful. So those 3 types of social capital are all at play within the Circles model.
So even in the context of relief and recovery throughout this pandemic, circle leaders experiencing poverty and volunteer allies are both benefiting from participation. After such a long period of social isolation, volunteers are searching for more meaning and more community connectedness. They have the skills to support other people experiencing poverty for the first time. And many, as a result of COVID-19, are now in the situation. So we're all just kind of working together and helping each other come out of this thing as best we can. The pandemic disrupted the way we do business, and many workers need to be reskilled for this new economy. But workers will need more than training. They'll need a community of friends to offer lasting support on all levels. And as you can see here, we have some pictures from some of the community things that we do and how we gather each week on our Zoom calls.
Thanks, Chantel. So let's talk a little bit more about the details of Circles, how it all works. So after circle leaders and circle allies go through training that I talked about a second ago, that 12-week training, we then create small groups. We call them matched circles. And those matched circles usually have one circle leader, their family, their children, along with 2, sometimes 3 circle allies, those volunteers. So these matched circles will get to know each other well enough to have a sense of trust, being able to build plans together, achieve SMART goals, to build resources, and eventually will lead to the circle leader overcoming poverty. So circle leaders and allies attend these weekly meetings for about 18 months. And that's basically the time frame that we found individuals are able to make substantial improvements, enough to be able to overcome poverty to withstand a crisis in the future and not be pushed back into poverty at the hands of a crisis. So these weekly meetings, right? They include some community building. We have traditions like new and goods and appreciations that help us to share what's going on in our lives, as well as focus on the positive and appreciate each other and connect with each other on that level. The weekly meetings also include, well, when they're in person, which haven't been for a while for us, they include a meal, they include a children and youth track, which includes an age-appropriate curriculum that presents those key concepts and ideas that circle leader adults are learning and kind of growing into as well. So it's a two-generational approach that disrupts the cycle of generational poverty as well. In many cases, at the end of that 18-month period, circle leaders are ready to take on more leadership roles in their communities or in the Circles initiative. And Chantel is a perfect example of that. If you want to kind of share your experience, Chantel, moving from circle leader into where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. So in my roles in my life, I'd never been called a leader. So that definition in itself was new to me, to think that I was in charge of going somewhere. And then I saw that I had a team of people who rallied around me and just supported me with the things that I was doing. Like, that was life-changing. Prior to being in Circles, to get help or assistance, I would usually call like helplines, United Way 211. I asked them one time, how many times have I called your company in the past, I guess maybe a couple months? They said over 41 times that I had called United Way 211 just to sometimes speak or share or get some different help. But now that I had actual people, I no longer needed to call there weekly or daily. I would show up each week with my plans in hand and say, this is what I need, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. And my allies would just rally alongside me and help me find those resources that I needed. I became a public speaker and then started to do facilitating for our leaders that were coming in, as well as allies, which, you know, I've been on the recruiting team, just planning and oversight, and now on the board of directors. So it's really great to see that as I show up for myself, those opportunities are now there that I can step into.
Thanks, Chantel. Yeah, and I'll say too, Chantel is awesome and really demonstrates the success of Circles. But I want you all to know too, Chantel isn't the only story, right? I want to show you kind of a bigger picture look at the results, and I'll let Chantel talk about these too, the results of Circles.
Yep, so in terms of results, here is a sample of 681 different participants who journeyed from registration through training completion to 18 months. In addition to income, we also track increases in the education, including graduate degrees, 4-year degrees, and certificates, employment, part-time and full-time, home ownership, reliable transportation, as well as social capital. So for instance, myself, while in the program, I was able to increase my credit, get extra training, become permanently versus precariously housed, and have transportation, not to mention tons of social capital for myself and my children. At intake, participants generally struggle to name even one emergency contact. Like I told you guys, I used to call United Way 211 to kind of get help and talk to others. But throughout this program, at the end, participants can name at least 3 to 5 people to call for assistance, to answer a question, or to just give some guidance. So that's that power of social capital there.
And I'll talk a little bit more about who are circle leaders. What do they look like? Where are they from? To show you the demographics, these are kind of all the circle leaders who showed up in that outcomes report that Chantel shared. So 53% are white, 35% are African American or Black, 84% are female, which these numbers kind of reflect the reality of where poverty exists in our society as well. We know that poverty disproportionately affects women and disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. And when we look down at the poverty type, we see about half are in situational poverty and half are in generational poverty. So we know that poverty keeps happening. We also know that it's been passed down and kind of continued through lineage as well. And then you can see the age distribution is all over the place, all the way from young in your 20s, all the way up to senior citizens are participating in circles to help kind of move their life in the direction that they want.
So to track more holistic measures, circle leaders complete what's called a life assessment tool at registration and then every 6 months, where they rate themselves on a scale of surviving to thriving. And the measures include power and autonomy, as well as purpose and meaning. So if you look on the chart, let's say we get started, someone's new into circles, they may feel helpless and like they have no control over their life. But our goal is to get them to the point where they feel that there is purpose. They do have the power to make these changes. And so by checking in every 6 months, it's a really great tool to show that we are making the difference that we say we are.
I think one of the really, really unique things about circles, although all of it's kind of unique and I say magical, is kind of my coined term to define circles, is that we're not only tracking the progress of circle leaders, but we know that circles is making an impact in the lives of the volunteers, the circle allies as well. So we use this definition of economic mobility that includes economic success. And last year we collaborated with Spark at Stanford University to create new measures for allies and volunteers. And I'm really excited to kind of see the results of this. We just started using this in our chapter. This new survey data is going to help us track the degree to which an ally's participation in circles has challenged their negative stereotypes of poverty and has prepared them to become agents of change in the community. But I think is so cool. I don't know anyone else who's really looking at how is this affecting allies so that they're ready to take on bigger things to address poverty on that higher level.
So now that we've looked at change on individual levels, we can talk more about the big view. So to advance systemic change, we have what's called a big view team. And this big view team goes through the process of, starting at the bottom left, you'll see listening to the lived experiences of circle leaders to reveal service gaps and system barriers. Then we move on to analyzing these gaps and barriers to create a community-wide solution where all hands are on deck and everyone is working together. We're then able to build community capacity for civic engagement opportunities, which are always nonpartisan. We like to then raise awareness with the larger community of these issues. We're then able to engage local, state, and federal elected officials, and then implement an action plan to create a discernible change. I think this process is amazing because, you know, one of us on our own can't always do much, but together we've seen some great things happen.
And as a chapter, we're not on our own either. Circles USA has provided us with this Big View policy platform as well. So they developed this with local, regional, and national recommendations. And these 6 issues are what kind of bubble to the top, the most important for circle leaders and for communities across the US and Canada. So this is quality jobs, addressing cliff effects, which we'll talk about in a second, access to broadband, internet, healthcare, major one, housing, as well as transportation. And chapters have taken on a range of actions in these areas. In Georgia, as well as other locations, developed a credit restoration loan program for their circle leaders to kind of bridge that financial gap that many face. In West Virginia, the Big View team hosted an online candidate forum on healthcare, so circle leaders and community volunteers could learn where their politicians stood on some of these issues. And then in Utah, circle leaders testified to their elected officials about just the exorbitant housing fees. And this helped to inspire a bill requiring landlords to disclose any fees prior to taking on a housing application fee. And then during the election year, we ran nonpartisan campaigns to get out the vote. We did it here in Central Florida. And I'll tell you a little bit about ours. This is a snapshot we took of some of our circles members voting. Obviously, this is nonpartisan efforts, but we found this to be really important, not only because civic engagement can lead to a better run government, which leads to a more relevant system of services for people, but this was also a way to really illustrate that a circle leader especially has a voice, and their voice matters. So we prepared leaders in this kind of get out the vote time to share their own voice, rather than speaking on behalf of them, rather than saying this person is experiencing this, we need your help, this person over here. We brought this person, as I might say, to the table. We said, you share your story. Some of our circle leaders were actually invited to share their story about the way that SNAP helped them and their families make it through the pandemic and some of the most difficult times of that, when it was really dire. This opportunity to storytell isn't just helping legislators understand food insecurity and the importance of SNAP during the pandemic, but also it provides an empowering experience to see that, for a circle leader to see, wow, my voice really matters and I can make a difference. I don't know, Chantal, do you want to share anything about your experience with that process?
Yeah, it's just amazing. Like, we were able to speak to elected officials, and like that rarely happens, where someone who may feel like they're not heard, we're able to just be at the table, like Adam said, and share what is important to us, or share the things that we're going through. It makes a big difference in the lives of people to feel that they are heard, and then actually see changes that can help them benefit themselves and their families. It's priceless.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I think it's really key to understand that it's not just about advocacy, but it's about the process and what it does for somebody who's never been invited to that table before. So through the Big View and through other resource teams, chapters are beginning to develop systems for poverty alleviation. And Chantal, I'll let you explain a little bit more.
So we have a connection across all 5 stages of self-sufficiency. And we want to do things such as promote job pathways. Chapters are promoting connection across these 5 stages, which are crisis intervention. So things such as you can see at the bottom, it says shelters, police, drug treatment, and food assistance. We then go to stabilization, where we may need to receive counseling, proper health care, housing, food stamps. There is then workplace readiness, which is workforce training, soft skills assessments, financial literacy, and things as such. Placement, where job fairs, we'll make sure that we're prepared and we have the proper skills to land the jobs, as well as advancements such as self-sufficiency planning, and further certifications and things such as that. Chapters are also analyzing the region's labor workforce, and we're developing the relationships with local employers and designing job pathways for workers with low wealth. And unfortunately, even certain jobs, when you get into a job, you can still be just working poor based on the amount that you're able to receive. And so we're planning and building an entrepreneurial track that will include advancement also for those that would like to build their gifts, skills, and talents into a career for themselves and their families as an entrepreneur. So I think that's amazing.
Chantel, isn't that what you did as part of your plan to overcome poverty?
Yes, that's exactly what I did. I actually heard about circles in another group I was in, and they said that they helped someone else kind of launch their own business. So that's what had me really interested from the beginning. And so I got right into it, and then just learned from circles what other programs were in the community that could help me with my entrepreneurial training or my further certifications in order to become that professional that I wanted to be. Since then, I've licensed and registered my LLC. I have my website, and I'm just moving forward with the help of my circles community to be an entrepreneur and to be able to take care of my family.
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. In order to aid circle leaders to overcome what we call cliff effect or benefit cliffs, Circles USA has partnered with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, which created an online planner for individuals to compare different job pathways and determine if or when, because usually it's when, a circle leader will hit one of these cliffs, and when it'll happen, and how long it will take to recover from that. So if you're not well aware of benefits cliffs, this basically happens as you improve your income and you were receiving some sort of assistance, whether it be SNAP or child care subsidy or housing subsidy or Medicaid. As your income increases, often those subsidies are taken away at larger intervals than the amount you're making. So it's actually creating a cliff, so to speak, where you can see it in this chart where maybe you had this much money to spend based on your income and your subsidies, and then all of a sudden, based on a pay rate, you now have negative or worse, and it takes time to rebuild that all the way out. So it's something that is systemic, that's disincentivizing moving up maybe the career ladder or the pay scale, because the fear of not being able to provide for your family within the time where you're making that much money that disqualifies you for benefits, to when you're actually making enough to make up the difference again. So we're working nationally to address that. And then we're working also locally and regionally to address that in Central Florida and in the Southeast. So in closing, I know Circles USA would love to explore working with you, and we're honored to be able to be a part of that. I serve as a trainer for Circles USA, where I coach and support chapters across the Southeast and a couple of others, and Lynette and I both do that work together. So some options might include starting a Circles chapter within your agency. It may be that there's no circles around you and you feel like this needs to be in my community. You may find that there is a Circles chapter near you. So you may want to collaborate with an existing chapter that's in your region or in your city. And there are over 70 different chapters across the US and Canada that you might be able to get involved in. And you also if you're already involved in circles, you may want to just be involved in creating a community of practice like we have in the Southeast. So Florida, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, we're all meeting regularly to really help each other's chapters develop. So I know each agency is pretty unique. So taking time to design and collaborate with each of you will take some time, obviously. But we do want to open it up now. If you have any questions that I don't think I saw any pop up in the chat specifically, but if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them with the remaining time that we have with y'all.
Yeah, there's one in the chat here. It says Chris, I'm not sure if that person changed their name or not, but it says, how does one get connected to the systemic team to address the situations and circumstances one has experienced and endured or currently facing?
So I'll say that team is part of a Circles chapter. So if there's not a Circles chapter in your area, then there won't be a team for you to join. That'll be up to you to kind of start. I don't know if on the national level, there is a Big View team that someone might be able to be involved in. I haven't heard of one.
We do, Adam. We do have a national Big View team, but typically everybody that's on it is already involved. But if you're interested, we potentially could have a meeting with partners to talk to them about what they might want to do. I don't think Kamatara is on, but Chris, I can put my email and relate that to the Big View team if you would like me to do that, or you want to.
Absolutely, that would be great.
Okay.
And if somebody wants to be part of a possible formation of a kind of an outside team, feel free to send me an email to Chris at chris@spreadpeace.circlesusa.org, and I will get that.
Well, I know when we're looking at our platforms, we're going to be looking for partnerships. So I don't know if it would be a regular part of the team, but it would at least, we could create a group of like-minded collaborators. So I'll put my email in for that. Please feel free to reach out to me, because I've been on the Big View team, helped create the platform.
Yeah, send that to Lynette, then you're hooked up with the big guns.
We have another question on here from Linda, and it says, regarding the cliff effect, is there an advocacy effort to get the federal guidelines changed for SNAP and housing, etc.? Adam, could you answer that?
I don't know. I think that would be the Big View team that Lynette's on addressing that. I don't know how well developed the plan is.
Well, Circles USA is a national organization. We do advocacy around the country. Sometimes that's through our local chapters working within their state and testifying, as Chantel mentioned. Sometimes it's Circles USA, one of our either Scott or others in the organization testifying as well. So there is a national advocacy program that we are deploying right now. And you may hear down the road about an advocacy program that we ask places, people that aren't part of the chapter in an area where there is a chapter, to participate in that as well.
Excellent, thanks, Chris. Michelle says here, what is a profile of communities in which Circles work, and what is the profile of volunteers?
That's a really good question. And I've seen Circles work in an array of different communities. It can work in rural, it can work in cities, it can work in suburban. Our Circles chapter is suburban. Well, we have two locations, and one is in the city and one is in the suburbs, and they're both doing really well. I've seen across our region rural chapters being pretty successful. Rural/suburban probably now is a better way to describe those communities. It's worked in homogenous communities as well as pretty diverse communities as well. I know our Circles chapters have a lot of people from different backgrounds, different races, different beliefs. And we just incorporate training on how to build relationships across those lines of diversity well, so that the work of that Circles chapter is successful. And what was the second part of that question? What is the profile of volunteers? Yeah, so volunteer, basically an ally is someone who has a sense of stability enough that they can spend time with and help somebody else. The profile isn't as specific as the leader profile, but we do want to make sure that we're not asking somebody who's in crisis to try to help somebody else get out of crisis, right? We want there to be a sense of availability to that.
Well, and Adam, can I add on?
Allies there. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I think the second part relates to the first part. So it kind of depends on what organizations are collaborating together, who your ally is. So some work with faith groups. Now, Circles is secular, and there's part of the fidelity is to not proselytize, but still there are a lot of faith groups that agree to be a part of it. So your allies may come from a faith tradition, or if the partner is predominantly a social service group, it may look completely different. So I think it's the beauty. I mean, Adam outlined it really well, all the different types of groups, and some are even completely standalone circles. They incorporate as a separate circles. The beauty of it is it's really adaptable. It can fit in so many different ways, and it works with government funding and private funding as well.
Thanks.
And you have to, somebody asked a question about funding, Chantel, in there. The funding is something you need to raise within your own community, but there's lots of different ways that you might come about, and it also depends on who the collaborating organizations are, where your funding might come from.
Right. Yep, that was from Michelle, typical funding sources. There was a question before that from Shari, and it said, could you speak to the content/subject matter of the 12-week training provided to future circle leaders? So I actually went through that training. It's been a while now, so I can't remember exactly what the topics were, but I do know that it helped me to just take a look at my situation from outside of my situation. A lot of times when you're in poverty, you're just in the tyranny of the moment, you're trying to put out fire after fire. You have no way to think in an abstract manner about how to better yourself because you're just trying to get through the day. But that training allowed us to get together as peers and kind of guide our own journey and see where we're coming from, see what the systemic barriers were, and just to look at things in a different type of way than I ever had in any group that I've been in was really life-changing and empowering as well. So it taught us things about hidden languages. It taught us, what else? Just setting up a plan, making SMART goals, budgeting, all of the things that really were important tools to empower myself to move forward is what the training was about. Adam, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll share some more specifics. So we obviously, we introduce circles and what it is and how it works. We take a moment to kind of redefine the circle leader as the main character in their story, as someone who has power to create the future that they want to see. And we talk about poverty and how it has traumatized most people who have experienced it, and that some of the hard things that circle leaders are going through aren't their fault. I think that's a really big thing, and even so can have created a harder time to process what's going on presently. We talk about expectations and bias, so we have to kind of set the stage for that multicultural work that Circles does. Circle leaders take a step back and create dream boards. So what do I want from my life? And then we talk about finance for 2 weeks. So that's really what's my relationship with money, and then how do I manage that money after I understand my relationship with it. We talk about rules of the workplace, healthier relationships, setting SMART goals, building your network of support, communication, and then that's kind of the full gamut of the circle leader training.
Thanks, Adam. There's another question here from Jen. It says, if there aren't any chapters in my area and I wanted to start a chapter, what kind of support is available for that? Lynette, could you answer that?
Maybe Chris.
I think
Yeah,
Chris
I'll-
is coming up.
Or Gina.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and
Gina's
take that. I'll go ahead and take that. So going back to the original question, and then coming back to this about where does it work? Once you decide that you want to start a Circles chapter and you have your licensing agreement in place, you're assigned a planner that's going to work with you to stand up your chapter. We have a comprehensive assessment program or document that you can go through even before you're licensed to see how it might work with you. And the support you'll receive once you become a licensed chapter is you'll be assigned a planner that's going to work with you during the setup. They're going to help you get your resource teams set up that you heard about on the call today. There's 5 different resource teams. We help you get the chair in place for that. We have an online community of support through Free Camp where people are sharing ideas and grants that they've written and help supporting each other. You'll have your own coach, just like the chapters have a coach. Our chapters have a national coach that they're assigned to that will help support you as you go along. And then once you have in addition to those things in terms of the support question, you're going to have a data system that we set up for you. So just like the impact report that our national organization sends out, you'll have an impact report for your chapters, which will help you get funding and show the impact of what you're doing in your community. So it's a real hands-on approach to standing up your chapter, especially in that first year. And once you've done your first cohort, but with circle leaders, you can then get green lighted to open up new locations in different areas or add more people to the same group that you already have. And Lynette, if you have anything to add, you can add to that too, but I hope that answers your question.
No, I think that's good.
There's another question kind of in the same field. Say more about starting a circle within an existing agency and cost to establish.
It's $10,000 for the first year. And if you want to call them, you have a unique situation, we can talk about that. There's different ways to get that paid. After that, it's $5,000 a year. And as part of that, what you get again is the online data system, the training, all the resources, your logos, your brochure, all of those things. So if you have questions about that, feel free to put in the chat that you want me to call you. My name's Chris, and I'll make sure I follow up with you and get you all the information. I have a lot of things I can send you that will answer a lot of those questions pretty comprehensively.
Thanks so much. Someone else put in here, it's under the name Chris, but if maybe you could put your name so someone can contact you. It says, I represent 41 ministry sites in Texas that are addressing poverty. They're impressed by the program and would be interested in chatting more about learning more about circles and how we might work together. So if you could put your name so we could make sure we're able to reach you, whoever's question that was, that would be great. Someone else, Jim said, how do you get leaders and allies to commit to 18 months of weekly meetings? Now, at first, I too was like, 18 months? Wait, no, that's a bit much. But when I got started with it, like Circles has become my recreation. I've found friends. So it's almost like what I do for fun each week, and it's working towards my goals, and it's moving me out of poverty, and it's helping my children. So at first I did think that was a bit much, but once you get into it, you really see that it's just like fun. It's recreation to me, personally.
So how long has it been since you had your first meeting at Circles?
Over 3 years now, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still come every week. I'm an ally now, and it's life-changing. Something you can do that's fun and life-changing at the same time. I haven't seen anything else like it.
Yeah, I know that we've often at the front end we ease folks into it. We used to say, can you make a 6-month commitment, and let's talk about renewing after 6 months. But the reality is that Circles attracts a very unique type of volunteer. It attracts a unique type of person in general, but the volunteers who join circles are those who have seen what doesn't work and are ready to figure out what they can do to actually make a long-term impact in the world. So you get those people who want to be there a long time. And granted, it's not always easy, and there have been plenty of people who have the full desire to make that 18-month commitment, but they're like, I need to wait. I need to wait a year. I need to situate my life first. But the cool thing is that they come back. Like I can think of 3 people just off the top of my head who said, I can't do this now, I want to do it later. And then they came back later and now they're allies. And I think that speaks volumes about the way that the type of volunteer that Circles really attracts.
I'll just throw an anecdote out there. When I first came to Circles, I was just shocked at the relationships that people had and how close they were. The founder of Circles, Scott Miller, just about, I think 6 months ago, was sharing with me that he was having lunch with the kids of the parents that he was an ally for 18 years ago. It just shows you how deep-rooted these relationships are.
Oh, fun question. Funmuzoma said, do you consider waiving 100% of the starting fees for the new chapters?
Well, unfortunately, we're not able to do that because there is some cost. We do have some wiggle room on how to set it up to make it easy to pay. But if that's the issue, again, give me a call. I just literally last week launched a chapter with the pastor of a church that they didn't have the money. And I hooked them up with their local CAP agency. And then the CAP agency had a call with me and they're getting completely funded. So there's options to you because Circles, has a 20-year track record. And a lot of people are familiar with it at the community action programs and elsewhere. And United Way has funded some of the chapters. So although we don't waive the fee, we do have the usual suspects for you to go to that might be able to help you out with that.
So I think, was it Michelle? Michelle asked, is there a way to find out where the other chapters are? That's in the chat if you're interested in looking to see if there's one near you. Gina shared the link directly.
Yeah, you can also go to circlesusa.org and then drop down. It says get involved, and it'll show you a map of the United States and where they're at.
Perfect. And that one's about funding, I think. How do you handle a leader who joins but doesn't really work the program? It all talk. That's a good question. And I think that usually if a circle leader wants to be there, there is a reason. And often the barriers that they're facing are invisible to me. I'll speak for myself. So I think that doesn't really work the program is another way to say has seemingly insurmountable obstacles. So I think the key to working with that circle leader is learning, listening, and understanding why, the why behind it, before deciding maybe circles is the right place for you or you're taking advantage of our program. I think it's really, really important to dig deeper with those circle leaders, and your circle's coach, who's your staff person, is usually the perfect person to kind of work with that circle leader if they're experiencing some hesitations or seeming unwillingness.
And what kind of helps with that is that 12-week training. If someone sits through 12 weeks of learning about the situation that they're in and learning how to make it better, chances are when they do get to that match point for the 18 months, you can usually overcome different obstacles that are in the way. And we also train the allies too and the leaders on different stages of relationships, because not all relationships are always 100% good. You know, we all have changes, but the training helps you know how to deal and navigate those things, which works well as well to give everybody an understanding.
For the training, people decide they're not ready, right? Like that helps as well. And sometimes they'll be ready later, and sometimes it's just not the right fit for them. But the training helps in that way too, I think, Chantel. I just want to, it's 3:56, so I just want to be, maybe I'm not sure we can answer all the questions, but maybe one more. There's some.
Yeah, this next question is pretty easy to answer. So Jen Sawyer asked, are leaders asked to pay anything to be a part of this program? The answer is no. Are volunteers? No. What's the minimum size of a chapter to make it most successful? Number of volunteers and leaders? We typically like max out at 15 leaders, which is 30 to 45 allies, plus leader kids, ally kids, volunteers. Our chapters are usually about 80 people, including everyone. Can be less than that. I think other chapters are smaller and they work fine. We've had seasons where we're smaller as well. I think probably it gets a little bit less cost effective the less number of leaders that you have. But we've brought on like 5 and 6 leaders at a time, and that's worked pretty fine for us. And other chapters are kind of in the same area. I don't know of any chapters that really have a larger amount than that, but there might be. I may just not know about them.
Thanks.
And there are guidelines for the types of support allies give, and that's part of the ally training. Like lending money and giving rides to kids and stuff like that. Like don't lend money and don't give rides to kids and that kind of stuff. The liability and power dynamic kind of thing. I think that's all the questions.
I think so too.
That were shared in the chat. Anyone have I guess we still have 2 minutes in our hour, so anyone have a follow-up question? Oh, okay. How do you connect people interested in the same geographical area? I don't know. How do you?
That would be Chris' question.
Oh, you mean in terms of people? Yes,
if you people interested in the same geographical area.
Well, we typically start a dialogue and it's all about communicating. So I usually connect those people together and see if there's a way for us to connect and move forward in that way. Or in some areas, there might be 2 separate circles organizations. We work with the existing chapter. If there's an existing chapter in that county, then we would have that chapter be involved in crafting something that might work for them. They could become a location. People talked about the cost. So maybe if they want to be a chapter, they become a location under an existing chapter. Lynette's set up some very successful chapters that way. I don't say chapters that way, but they expanded her chapter through these locations very well. So if you're in a geographical area, the first thing is to send me an email, Chris, CHRIS at circlesusa.org. I can go through our database and look at all the people in your area that have ever asked us about starting a Circles chapter, and we can kind of start the dialogue from there.
Well, and if I could just real quickly answer the question about cliff effects and money, I think the hope, because it's right at 4 o'clock, the hope of the partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta is that we would have real tangible numbers of what those wraparound services would cost for somebody that's hitting the cliff effect, and that we would be able to find partners in the community to help cover the cost.
Minimized view.
It's really an exciting.
It won't let me maximize or do anything with options.
Hey, Courtney, will you mute yourself?
I think the recording just, well, maybe not. But anyway, there's not really now, but there's hope through this growing partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta to be able to do what you to either change the policy with some of the cliff effects or find collaborators that will help fill in the gap for people. It's really exciting development. I did that very fast, Adam.
All right, guys. All right. Well, thank you to Chantel, Adam, Lynette for all this great information. Again, if you want to get more information, you can email me, Chris, CHRIS, at circlesusa.org. I have an assessment guide for you to do. I can connect you with others in your area. Or you can send an email to hello@circlesusa.org. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.